Justice Scalia was an incredibly influential justice. Here's a look back at his wit and his legacy. For decades, Justice Antonin Scalia led the charge to take constitutional law back, he would say, to its original meaning.
The Constitution is not meant to facilitate change. It is meant to impede change, to make it difficult to change.
On that score, perhaps Scalia's greatest triumph, his ruling in 2008 that the Second Amendment guarantees an individual right to bear arms, where he brushed aside concerns about gun violence in modern America. It is not the role of this court to pronounce the Second Amendment extinct, he wrote. Another victory? Bush v. Gore, the 2000 case that awarded George W. Bush the presidency and divided the country.
I and my court owe no apology whatever for Bush versus Gore. We did the right thing, so there.
In dissent, he was biting, caustic, and clear. When the court upheld Obamacare for the second time last year, Scalia sneered, "We should start calling this law SCOTUS care." And in oral arguments, lawyers feared his pointed questions, as when he challenged the idea that the court could create a right to gay marriage, that after 200 years of laws banning it.
When did it become unconstitutional to exclude homosexual couples from marriage? When did the law become this?
Scalia loved a good argument, but made friends across the political and judicial spectrum, most famously with liberal icon Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
We agree on a whole lot of stuff.
Really, Ruth is really bad only on the knee-jerk stuff. She is.
And for more on Scalia, we spoke with Cornell Law School professor John Blume. He argued several cases at the High Court in front of Scalia. Well, you appeared many times beyond just the 8 times you argued, but in those cases, the late justice agreed with you twice and 6 times went in the other direction. I wonder if your perspective is similar that I've heard from every other attorney who's appeared before him, that of all the justices, he was the one they were most on their toes for, because not only did he relish verbal combat here, but he also loved to trip up attorneys, not only just test them, but also trying to make his point in the process. How was your experience with the late justice?
Yes, I would say it was similar to that. He was the kind of person that you certainly had to bring your A game to court for. You knew that you were going to undergo rigorous questioning, especially if you were someone who, like myself, was there on behalf of a death-sentenced inmate. It could sometimes be frustrating because you felt like you were, part of a pawn in a larger game, which in fact you were. But he was definitely, a very intelligent man who often asked very pointed questions.
Can it be exaggerated, his impact, especially, I've heard a lot of people say, especially for a non-chief justice, he's probably had as much, if not more, impact than any justice who sat on the bench, and a lot of times, obviously, delivering the majority opinion. His place in history.
Yes, I think he'll definitely go down as one of the great justices, whether you are a liberal or a conservative. He really created or brought back the idea, the jurisprudence of originalism, and really invigorated that of trying to discern the original meaning of the Constitution, what the framers wrote, and so in that regard. He'll certainly, be remembered. And then I think he also made the court itself, on a more practical level, a much more active bench, in his very aggressive style of questioning. So I think both on the practical side and on the doctrinal side, he will go down as one of the great members of the court.
Talk about that a little bit more, if you would, John, in terms of his active nature and how that changed, at least for the public, how we look at the court.
Well, the court has always been a place where lawyers were asked a number of questions, but I think he had a very aggressive, style and was a very active questioner, while some other members of the court before him were much more in favor of giving the lawyers time to make their own points. And I think his aggressive style of questioning kind of spread over to other people. And so now you see, even relatively new justices like Justice Sotomayor be very active in oral argument. So it's just a much the term we use is a hot bench. It's just a much hotter bench, and it's become one since he joined the court.
You know, he was criticized at times for not just making strong opinions, but also almost inviting politics into some of his conversations, including famously that hunting trip that he had taken with Dick Cheney at one point. Did he? I mean, he was a brilliant guy. Whether people love him or hate him, he consciously had to know he was inviting that. Do you think he welcomed it?
I don't know if he welcomed it. I don't know that it really bothered him. I mean, I think he was very much his own person. I think he was very comfortable with his opinions and his interactions with people, on and off the court. And he was not one to let, criticism force him to change his actions.
Finally, John, any particular anecdote that stuck with you from your times at the Supreme Court, whether it be as the attorney arguing the case or whether you were filing an amicus brief and you were there, or anything that you'll remember the late Justice Scalia for in particular?
Yes, I think one of the funniest moments, or at least that I remember from there, I was there in a case. I was not arguing counsel. I was co-counseled. It involved whether Texas prosecutor had suppressed evidence which was favorable to the defendant. And the Attorney General arguing the case for the Texas gave an answer which he clearly did not like, and he responded, "I really wish you wouldn't have said that, and I think what you meant to say was X." And she immediately said, "Yes, that's exactly what I meant to say." So I think he was very active involving it, and he often, when he got answers he didn't like from the party he wanted to rule for, he was very quick to throw them a lifeboat, and that was a great example of it.
Well, I certainly appreciate a few minutes, John. Again, it's John Blume, Cornell Law School professor, and obviously someone with an experience before the late justice in the High Court. Thanks again for the time.
Sure. Thanks very much for having me.
Coming up next, the panel joins us to discuss the political and legal implications of Scalia's death.